Hello, welcome to Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Yunke Etade. Coming up in the programme, Angola's capital at a standstill as unrest and looting takes hold for a second day. A strike by taxi drivers over fuel price hikes spiralling, with at least 4 people killed and scores arrested. Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara does a 180, announcing he's throwing his hat in the ring for October's upcoming election. The 83-year-old now vying for a 4th term. And Benin grants American R&B star Sierra citizenship as part of a scheme giving descendants of African slaves passports. The singer is said to be the first to receive citizenship under Benin's plan aimed at boosting tourism and confronting the country's role in the slave trade. Thanks for joining us. Let's begin in the Angolan capital, where shots have been ringing out again this Tuesday as Luanda is gripped by a second day of looting. The city has been at a standstill as transport is halted and shops shuttered over unrest that originally began as a strike by taxi drivers aiming to decry fuel price hikes. At least 4 people have been killed and scores arrested since the violence erupted. Clarisse Fortuné has the story for us.
For the second day in a row, the Angolan capital witnessed scenes of chaos. Burning barricades, flaming trash bins, and a heavy police presence on the streets. Security forces were struggling to regain control. But anger is brewing, sparked by the government's sudden decision to raise fuel prices. Angola may be Africa's second largest oil producer, but millions live in poverty. The hike has hit public transport hard, and with it, the livelihoods and daily costs for many Angolans.
I came to show solidarity with the Angolan people. People are suffering. We have to protest and show support. You see, the cost of living keeps rising, and we don't know what things will look like in the days to come.
This is where we say enough. We can't keep changing course every time. Whenever this happens, we won't stop. We'll keep going.
At least 4 people have been killed since the protests began. Shops have been looted and vandalized. Police say they've arrested hundreds of people. A major taxi drivers association has condemned the violence, but vowed to continue the 3-day strike, saying the voice of the taxi drivers reflected the anger of the Angolan people.
Now, he had said he wasn't going to throw his hat in the ring, but Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara now says he will stand for a 4th term in October. The 180 follows the death of his hand-picked successor, Prime Minister Amadou Gon Koulabi. Well, the move from 83-year-old Ouattara sets the stage for a contentious vote after opponents were sidelined by court rulings. Here is our West African correspondent, Justice Baidu, with the latest.
Mr. Ouattara made the announcement in a televised broadcast saying he has taken this decision because Ivory Coast faces major economic and security threats which require experienced hands like himself. He would be seeking his 4th term in office after he revised the country's constitution, which originally set only 2-term limits for sitting presidents. The news does not come as a surprise to many, as many people in his party had been urging him on. His RHPD political party selected him in June of this year to represent them in the election which happens in October this year. Despite the support that he enjoys in his party, this decision further entrenches the division that the country suffers. The country went to war in 2010 over electoral disputes. Mr. Ouattara's most prominent opponent, former President Laurent Gbagbo and former Credit Suisse boss Tidjani Thiam, are already barred from taking part in this election.
In Kenya, trials against police officers involved in the killing of protesters are multiplying. A court in Nairobi is examining the case of Rex Masai this Tuesday. The young man was protesting last year's finance bill when police allegedly opened fire and killed him. He was the first in a long list. Over the past year, more than 100 protesters have died and many more injured. Our correspondent Bastien Renouy reports.
The hearing started with a key question. Can a witness fearing for their life testify anonymously? According to the judge, the answer was yes. The witness linked the death of Rex Masai to a police officer, and this witness was afraid of police retaliation. It gives you an idea of the tense atmosphere here in Kenya at the moment. Many Kenyans and many human rights organizations are calling for an end to police brutality. According to Rex Masai's father, the goal of this trial is to send a strong message to Kenyan authorities.
Okay, it's like both. It's against the government, and the case is now against the brutal police officers who acted harsh during the protest. If the truth is found and the culprit is apprehended, maybe it will bring a big impact to the government, because that is what we, as Kenyans, we are all expecting.
So far, impunity is widespread. According to The Nation, a leading newspaper here in Kenya, there is a blue code of silence at play. As an example, last week during the trial, a police officer struggled to explain discrepancies in a weapons log. This log could have been key to confirming whether Rex Masai was killed by a police gun and who was the officer using that gun. Today, proceedings were suspended. They will resume in September, but there is still a long way to go before a final verdict.
Now, we are going to touch on a story we were mentioning just earlier on. American R&B singer Ciara has become a citizen of Benin under a new law that grants citizenship for these descendants of African slaves. The Grammy-winning star appeared alongside President Patrice Talon at a ceremony over the weekend in Cotonou, the capital. The star is among an early cohort of descendants getting the coveted green passport as part of the program intended to acknowledge Benin's historical involvement in the transatlantic slave trade and boost tourism. Some say it's Benin's latest attempt to expand its soft power and influence. Well, we're going to speak to Leonard Wancheknon, who is a professor of politics and international affairs at Princeton University. He's also from Benin. Great to see you, Leonard. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. As somebody from Benin, I do want to get your opinion on this law. How do you feel about this, about descendants of African slaves getting the chance to get citizenship now?
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I think this is wonderful for two reasons. First, because it strengthens the ties, the historical ties between African American and Africans, particularly Beninese. But also because, as you mentioned earlier, it's an opportunity for us to invest in historical cultural tourism, which will help boost the economy, but also a stronger sense of identity and connection to the past, not only in Africa, in Benin in particular, but also in the US and among the diaspora in general.
Well, this idea of connection must be what's driving a lot of people to now sign up. We've had Ciara now become a citizen, and I also read that millions of Brazilians are actually signing up on that platform to be able to get the chance to get citizenship as well. Why do you think this scheme has become so popular?
Oh, because it has been around for a long time. From the 19th century, we have about 30,000 Brazilian free slaves who moved back to the continent, Benin, Nigeria, and Ghana. And they have major impacts on the local economy and also on the fights for independence. And I also know that, for instance, many of the major historical figures in the diaspora, like W.B. Du Bois or Arthur Lewis, the Nobel Prize in Economics, they all were involved in Ghana, particularly in post-independence Ghana. So it's not a new phenomenon. So, and I'm glad that it's being formalized, that now it's very much, I hope this is a boost for a new wave of involvement of African diaspora on the continent. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's super important that this is an opportunity to invest in African history, African past, so that those who take this opportunity to be connected, they can learn more about the past. They can even have more reason, to be, to embrace their African origin.
Well, Leonard, I do want to get just a quick word from you on the impact that this scheme could have economically. We've seen in Ghana and Nigeria an influx of returnees that in turn has triggered price hikes. How do you think the economy will cope in Benin if we have a similar scenario?
Oh, I think it will create job opportunities, like, for instance, hotels and also historical cultural spaces in Benin will benefit from that. So I hope, for instance, as I mentioned earlier, that this is an opportunity to invest. And personally, I'm really interested in investing in cultural spaces in my hometown, and so that we can take advantage of this influx of African from the diaspora to the continent. Now, it means that some policies, some steps need to be taken to protect those who might be economically and adversely affected by this. But on the balance, I think it's a wonderful economic opportunity for the country.
Leonard, it's great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Eye on Africa today. Well, stay with us here on France 24.